everybody. Welcome to the sixth and final SPERA webinar in this series. Today we'll be hearing about a project that's setting new standards in both the early childhood and vocational education, supporting families and future educators in regional communities. Before we get into today's presentation, I'd like to acknowledge country wherever you may be joining us from today. For me, I'm on the lands of the Yamatji Nation and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. And really, I'd like to thank them for their care of the country that sees us at Geraldton University Centre being able to continue that culture of learning that's taken place for thousands of years. I'd also like to take the opportunity to remind you of SPERA's upcoming National Conference for Regional, Rural and Remote Education in Ballarat next month. If you've not already registered for the event, it's not too late. Just head to the SPERA website, spera.asn.au, and you'll be able to see the link to the conference there to register. So now on to the main event for this morning. I'd like to introduce Rhys Millington and Shanon Pillion from Uni Hub Spencer Gulf in South Australia. Rhys is the Director of Programs and Partnerships at Uni Hub, and while based in Port Pirie, he works across the five Uni Hub locations. He's been a Centre Manager, an Operations Manager before his current role, and he's also the South Australian rep on the Regional University Study Hub Network Advisory Committee. Shanon, meanwhile, is the Port Augusta Uni Hub Centre Manager, and that's a role she's had since the centre first opened in April 2020. So together, they're going to be providing us with an update on the Roxbury Downs Early Childhood Project, for which they received the Australian Rural Education Awards in 2024 in both the vet and early childhood categories. We're also going to hear about a new project that's emerged out of all of this in Port Augusta. So it's over to you, Rhys and Shanon.
Thank you, Natalie. And we'd just like to thank SPERA for having us today. I know we've had a number of webinars over the past, but it's a really a good time to provide everyone with a bit of an update on what we've been doing with the Roxbury project, but also the Port Augusta project, as Natalie just mentioned. So I'm just going to share my screen. If I can just get a thumbs up if that's working for everyone. Excellent. So my name's Rhys. I'm the Director of Programs and Partnerships at Uni Hub Spencer Gulf, and I'm joined today by my colleague Shanon Pillion, who's the Centre Manager at our Port Augusta Study Hub. So we'll walk you through the Roxbury Downs project, something that we're really proud of, and we were lucky enough to be recognised with this with an ARIA award in 2024 in the early childhood category. We'll cover a little bit about how the project came about, how we delivered it, some of the outcomes that it's achieved, and now how it's grown into another second project in Port Augusta. And we'll leave time for questions at the end, obviously. So Uni Hub Spencer Gulf, we were established in 2018, opening up our first study hub in 2019, growing to now 5 study hubs in regional SA. So they're marked as images on that map there. So we've got sites in Lincoln, Augusta, Roxbury Downs, Port Pirie and Kadina. We also provide outreach services to some smaller communities where we don't have physical hubs, but we do certainly do some outreach presence to communities in Woodner, Whyalla, Burra and Minlaton. So all these sites have slightly different characteristics and demographics, but they do share common themes in terms of having regional workforce shortages in some key areas and facing barriers to tertiary education. SA has pretty limited regional university campuses, probably due to the fact that SA doesn't have a large regional population centre. So the Regional University Study Hub program is really critical in SA. Quick piece about our operating model. So we do have 5 study hubs funded through the Rush program, and we operate physical staff sites in 5 locations. So very similar to lots of the other study hubs across Australia. We are governed by a community and volunteer board. Where we do differ to some other hubs is our strategic focus with partnerships with industry, addressing local workforce shortages, and some of our work in building career aspiration. So we do invest significant resources into industry and school engagement across all of our locations. We really want to try and build a really strong pipeline of students, both school leavers and those looking to upskill. So in our green box there, titled Workforce Courses, this is where we partner with industry and universities to really resource ourselves to provide the support we need to build students into key workforce professions. And we do that quite well, we believe. We feel a lot of local workforce shortages. Lots of our graduates are really successful straight off the bat in gaining employment. So really, it's more of a proactive approach in trying to find professions, field professions like teaching and social work and nursing and engineering and things like that we really know we have a need for in our locations. So that's slightly different to some of the operating models to others. And the third one is becoming a real key part of our core business. It's around career aspiration. So what we're trying to achieve is really building the awareness of the careers and pathways for those in our community. We think it's really important because 45% of our students are the first in their family to attend university. So we do a lot of work with schools, partner with over 50 secondary schools across our catchment, and we do a lot of engagement activities across the year. So that's a quick insight into our operating model. Roxby Downs project. So 2024, we were successful in receiving 2 ARIA awards for the early childhood project. So one in the early education category and another in the vocational award category. For those who aren't familiar with Roxby Downs, it's a mining town. It's a transient town, multicultural population of around 15,000 people. It's a purpose-built mining town that supports BHP's Olympic Dam mine. It's around 750 k's from Adelaide, so quite a long drive, and in a fairly remote part of SA. The rationale for the project was that essentially there's only one childcare centre in town. So given that it's also a mining town where lots of people move in and out, retaining qualified staff in that centre was hugely challenging. And it meant that there was a real reduced licensing capacity and ability to host children. So as a snowball effect, this then impacts the employers in town. So they can't find workers because of the lack of daycare. At the time the project was looking at being rolled out, there was over 100 children constantly on the wait list and no training providers that were willing to engage and support these students or people that were looking to study early childhood. So that's a bit of a snapshot of where it was. Then how did it work? So it was launched in 2023. It delivered a blending learning model that enabled residents to complete their Certificate 3 in early childhood. Sorry, hit the wrong button. Early childhood through a combination of flexible online coursework, practical and hands-on training. So there were 4 key players in the project, if you like. We provided the project management support. So we did a lot of work in marketing and building up interest from participants in the project. And we provided the wraparound support to students once they were participating. BHP were the funder, so they acknowledged the importance of this project for both Roxby, but also its own employment prospects. CQU were the trainer, so they were engaged to deliver the learning in modules. They were an existing partner of Uni Hub Spencer Golf, but they were also able to deliver this in a way that was going to support these remote students. And then the Children's Centre played a pretty critical part too. They provided the practical components, placements for students, and ultimately were the employer for many of the students. So that's a bit of the roles that we all played. Some of the outcomes, we had 10 students complete their Certificate 3, 6 of which went straight into employment at the Children's Centre, which was fantastic. The capability and carrying capacity of the centre increased. So at the time that this wrapped up around the awards in 2024. The wait list had come down from 100 children to 76. There were 4 students who commenced their diploma, so that highlighted the ability for students to upskill and progress through their qualifications. The project won a number of awards. We presented at a number of conferences and webinars like this since, so it's had a lot of great acknowledgement. The importance of the project was certainly recognised by those involved, and on the previous slide, I mentioned who they were, but we also got a funding extension from BHP to continue to roll this out until the end of 2028. So the aim there is to continue to support around 10 Cert 3 or diploma students each year. Ultimately, the success of this initial project has led to a lot more communities coming forward also, all across our catchment, and it ultimately led to another project in Port Augusta. So I'm now going to hand over to Shanon, who'll give you a bit of an update on that project.
Oh, thanks, Rhys. So building on the success of the project at Roxby Downs, I'll just take you through the Port Augusta project, which follows a very similar model because that model was so successful. So as with the Roxby Downs project, the Uni Hub has provided the project management and the wraparound support for every participant, which helps keep them engaged, and we keep them assist them with the process from enrolment right through to completion and any issues they may have. Our local Port Augusta City Council received a grant through the state government, Flying Start, which has allowed them to fund this project and the fees associated with it. Central Queensland University again is delivering the online training modules and the academic support behind the training. And the local children's centre, which is actually owned and run by the local council, is providing the practical placement and the hands-on training, so participants are gaining their experience while they're studying. Funding for the project enables the whole program to be developed and delivered. Okay. The aim of the Port Augusta project is to recruit and support 20 new early childhood educators, directly addressing the staffing and licensing requirements at our Port Augusta Childcare Centre. The key strength of the model is flexibility, so participants can undertake a Certificate 3, a diploma or a bachelor level qualification. So there's a clear pathway regardless of where someone is starting from. It again is delivered in partnership with Central Queensland University, with the Uni Hub providing academic wellbeing and mentoring support that keeps participants supported throughout the project. So at the moment for our current project, it commenced in July 2025 with 20 participants coming on board. We've had 8 withdraw, which probably isn't unexpected in a project like this, which leaves 12 active participants. 10 are studying a Certificate 3, 1 is in a diploma and 1 is at a bachelor level. 7 of those students are actually current staff within the local childcare centre who have previously been unable or have been unsuccessful in trying to complete that qualification. Our first graduate has just come through, and with 3 more expected in October. And importantly, we are already seeing a pipeline with students looking to continue on to diploma or bachelor qualifications, which is something that they weren't even talking about when this project started. The impact on the centre has been significant. Our capacity has increased by 20 places, and the centre is no longer operating under staffing waivers, which they have been doing for a number of years. So just moving parts. So this is probably for both of the projects between Roxby and Port Augusta. So it hasn't been without its challenges, and we need to address these as we're going through. So recruiting participants with suitable employment potential takes a real effort, and there's limited access to flexible vocational training in remote communities. Another barrier was that because we're using Central Queensland University as the training provider, that those fees aren't subsidised in South Australia, which creates a financial hurdle for participants, which we are lucky because we've got funding through the local council received, so we are covering the cost of those fees for participants. We've also had to provide to build community awareness around the project and around those qualifications being available. We've had to provide extra digital literacy support for some students around access to those, and resource the significant coordination, student support, and the reporting that is required for a project like this. So we have learnt some lessons through the project on how we're going to approach future projects. So from Roxby, we changed it for Port Augusta, but we've certainly come up with some different things. So childcare providers really need to lead the participant recruitment. They know who's the right fit for their centre, and ultimately the aim is that they're going to be employed at that centre or a centre within the region. Securing funding for course fees up front removes a financial barrier for students, which is really important. And it's not just the fees, it's also things associated with the Working with Children check and any additional training that they may need. And building clear pathways to have a certificate through to a diploma and then through to a bachelor keeps people progressing through, and it also creates career aspiration with their own community and those stepping stones. The flexibility to meet individual needs is essential, as is investing in community engagement and the promotion from the very start. Finally, these projects need to be properly resourced for management, administration, and student support. And we need an ongoing pipeline of students to genuinely to build a genuinely sustainable local workforce for the future. Okay, so what's next for us? So, like Rhys said, we have been approached by other communities for this project. There's, as everyone knows, there's a massive childcare shortage, and they keep building childcare centres, but they need to resource them. We also are looking at follow-up projects with consistent intakes, like Roxby Downs. They've been extended funding for 3 years, and I know our local council's looking at the same thing. So retained for staff retention through those. And about giving, which I've already addressed, about the students having the opportunity to progress further on into their qualifications. To support all of this, we're actually looking at bringing on a dedicated project manager to help coordinate these projects, just with that expertise around the childcare and the requirements, as well as the reporting requirements that are required for it. And that's probably all for our presentation. If anyone's got any questions.
Terrific. It is such a great project. Are there, if you've got a question, you can put up your hand, or there's not too many of us here right now, so be prepared to just sing out. That's okay as well. I've got a couple, but I won't hog it. I'll leave the space open first if Shawn, Lucy, or Jessica have a question that you might like to direct to either Shanon or Rhys or both.
Natalie, I'm happy to jump in, and Rhys and Shanon, thank you so much for the presentation. Rhys, I'm from the Regional Education Commissioner's team, and you may have seen we did include a case study on your work in a previous report of Fiona's. It's really great to see the progression into other towns, and yeah, I'll take another look at the slides, but really unpacking some of those challenges. The funding, Central Queensland University, I'm guessing it's the vet component that obviously wouldn't meet requirements in South Australia because that's state-based. But yeah, so kind of picking out some of those, and if you've got any other particular challenges or solutions that you'd like, the Commissioner to be aware of, that's what we're often on the lookout for. Are those kind of issues that create big hurdles, but yeah, we like to surface them and hopefully get some conversation at least on some of those. So if there's anything else that springs to mind, I'd love to know. But thank you. The project is fantastic, and I'm so delighted to see it expand.
Thanks, Lucy. Appreciate it. Did you have anything you wanted to add there, Shanon? I think Shannon's been at the more of the coal face, I guess, in terms of some of the challenges that the projects can encounter. I think that we were just chatting earlier that often it seems like childcare centres are a bit against the clock to come up with a solution in finding enough educators. Like, it might be that the funding's announced for a rapid expansion of a centre, or, you know, the 3-year early childhood thing comes in, and I think there are options, but often they need a solution right now. And that's where we got pulled in initially with the Roxby project, is like they need a solution right now. And that's sort of what happened with Port Augusta too, that, yeah, they were operating under waivers and they just really needed to get an outcome. And there can be challenges with RTOs being able to deliver in our communities in a way that's appetizing, and that it's doable for students while they're already employed somewhere, because they may not necessarily be able to, you know, step out and do lectures and tutorials at set times and all these things. But that can often be the challenge for us. There's also the minimum number thing, I think, that can happen with some RTOs that can, you know, we might not have enough to meet the minimums. So yeah, I think that all plays a part of it. But is there anything else, Shanon, that you thought we could add for Lucy?
No, that's probably around the flexibility for local RTOs. Like, we certainly approached RTOs within that. There's a limited amount of RTOs that would deliver in our region, and we did the ones that we did approach them, but often they weren't that flexible around intake, the requirement, like Rhys said, around face-to-face, and their ability to do, because they need to do observations. Some of them won't do them remotely, even though CQU will. So that's a huge barrier. So, and even in discussions with the childcare centre, because I was only there yesterday, but they said they've achieved more since this project's been done with their staff than they have in the last 4 or 5 years. So they've got students that have been studying for their Certificate 3 for over 4 years with other providers and have only just got to completion. So they weren't keen to go with one of those, which is why CQU was such a good option. But yeah, flexibility with local providers is a huge thing.
Brilliant. Good old CQU comes to the rescue again.
Yes.
There's a couple of questions from Jessica that she's put up on the chat. She'd like to know, how long will you be able to provide subsidised, fully funded fee coverage for?
Yeah, so I can answer some of that. So the way these projects work is that essentially, someone has to pay for it. So in SA, there have been some grants available through,
Blind Start.
Yep.
Yep.
So they've fund, like the Port Augusta Council have got funding through that grant to basically pay for the student fees. So while there's funding available, that'll occur. And on the flip side, the Roxby one's a little bit different. BHP have been paying the fees to support it in town. So as long as there's a funder, it works. But when it will stop is there's no funds available to basically fund this, because it's clearly not something that we're able to resource, nor would the students be able to pay their own way if it's full fee paying. I don't think that'd be that appetizing. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. At the moment, we've got Roxby locked into the end of 28, and Port Augusta's, when's that agreement for, Shanon? I know that they're talking about extending it.
Yeah, for another 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The key is to lock in some sort of funder, whether that's a grant or a large organisation, corporate, etc. But at the moment, these two projects are sounding like 28 and 29.
And that's great that you've got a funder, but it does make you want to shake your head that I don't know what it's like in South Australia, but in WA that would be a fee-free course, a Cert 3 in childcare, because of the workforce needs. So if it's something similar, it's just does beg a belief when you've got a good model working that you wouldn't go down that way. Jessica also asks, are students guaranteed employment post-graduation? And there's a second part too. And or is there a requirement for students to provide a certain term of work if their fees have been covered? Like, do they have to be employed for 6 to 12 months post completion or anything like that?
Yeah, they're not bonded in any way once they've completed. So that was certainly discussed, and that's a bit, yeah, no, they're not. So they are guaranteed employment, and we've sort of changed. When we initially did the project, we advertised publicly. So we got we were inundated with applicants, obviously. So a lot of them didn't meet requirements around, especially around visa conditions, because they can't go through the CQ program, even if they're paying full fee, which is very complicated. But yeah, so we sort of changed it a bit. So now we make sure that they are recruited through the childcare centre because they are guaranteed employment. It is to staff the local childcare centre. So yes, they are guaranteed employment at the end, but no, they aren't bonded to stay there even if their fees have been paid.
Great.
I think if I can just back onto that as well is I think the reason this has worked quite well in our first two projects is that they are directly related and they're kind of a little bit contained. It's not a free for all in terms of we're supporting, any student who wants to study a Cert 3 and don't have connections to an employer, etc. I think that part makes it quite contained and well connected to the employer. Would you agree, Shanon?
Yeah, and with this qualification as well, because they have to basically commence placement. Honestly, it's the first thing they have to do when they commence that qualification is fill in the work placement forms. So they have to make contact with the childcare centre. They have to get permission to do their placement there. So that's already because, yeah, you're already in conversation with the employer because of that. So it's not like they're doing the whole qualification and then saying, oh, here I am, I've finished. That's already starting right from the beginning, which is, yeah, actually, it makes us what we want to do. They're actually enforcing it through the program anyway. Does that make sense? But they really need to start their placement straight away, and they continue that through it. They need to do 160 hours voluntary placement, or can be voluntary unless you're working there.
Yeah, great model. Conscious that the time is almost up. Any other last questions for Rhys and Shanon? No, but certainly thank you. Sean was going to ask about the choice of Ed Provider CQU, but that's answered well. Fantastic model. I think we would all agree with that. It's a terrific model, and I'm sure you'd all thank me in join me in thanking Rhys and Shanon for their presentation today. So there is a survey link in the chat if you'd like to respond to that. You can also access the recording of the webinar on the SPERA website, spera.asn.au. And just a reminder that if you haven't registered for the conference, you can while you're there. You can also see the full program, which is up on the website now as well. So that conference, the National Conference for Regional, Rural and Remote Education, 18 to 20 August in Ballarat. You'll see that we've got some great keynote speakers. We've got an international keynote speaker to add that sort of what happens in the US in a regional community from Colorado Springs. That's Robert Mitchell. And then local documentary filmmaker and photographer and storyteller Connor Ashley is going to help us just to shape our own stories, the amazing things that, like what we've heard this morning, that happen in regional Australia, so that we can better share our successes more broadly and continue to get that funding or whatever it is that we need to keep those projects going. So hope to see you all in Ballarat in August. But for now, thank you for joining us and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.